This once seldom used build has been getting a lot of interest lately, many claiming the build is broken, and I'm hoping the newfound fun with this build will not lead to the devs nerfing it because we just can't have nice things. In my PTR testing video having the Act 1 Mercenary buffing with the Hustle Runeword to kill Diablo clone, link in the description if you want to check it out, I got a comment from Squeaky Cheeks whom said they enjoyed the video, but were not a fan of the new Runewords that were introduced in the patch. Do keep in mind, this was also prior to the final patch notes when I'm sure the majority would agree a few of the Runewords as they were before were not as favorable as they became. So I wanted to show some of the new Runewords some love and see how well they can work together. In today's video, I'm going to go over the build for the patch 2.6 Runeword inspired Magic Find Phoenix Strike Martial Artson, or the Nuclear Assassin, that is much more radioactive than Chernobyl while still being considered budget. Also, I'm not going to be using Sunder Charms for this build, so I will be taking on immunes to the damage I'll be dealing. Hopefully this can help indicate how powerful this can be with a focus on the Runewords that were just introduced to us in this patch. Do keep in mind that I understand ladder just started and a lot of people online are not able to immediately just make this build. However, I wanted to showcase it in single player offline, so that way if any of you guys are interested in making this build, you would be able to know what to expect when it comes to using more of a budgeted option when it comes to your helmet, armor, and even additional gear that you would be able to pair up with dual Mosaic. So this build is just more so for anybody that's playing on ladder, something that you could potentially aim towards if this would be something you're interested in. I'm going to go over the attributes, the skill tree, the gear for my character and my mercenary, and afterwards I'm going to show you guys some gameplay so you could see this build in action. But do keep in mind that when it comes to this build, there are different ways you can be able to gear the character depending on your needs, whether you're trying to go for maximum DPS, you're trying to do a Magic Find character, or a hybrid of the two. Just keep in mind when it comes to looking at the gear choices that I'm going to be choosing, that you can choose alternative gear depending on the demand that you have for your build. Now let's go ahead and get into the video. For the attributes, this is a max vitality setup, meaning we have enough points into strength to be able to equip our gear, enough dexterity to be able to use our claws, and the rest of the points are dumped into vitality, nothing into energy. For the skill trees, it's going to be somewhat complicated, but I hope this will eventually make the most sense when you see the gameplay. We have put no hard points into the trap skill tree. For the Shadow Discipline skill tree, I have 1 point into claw mastery, initially 1 point into weapon block, then 1 point into burst of speed, and 1 point into fade. Of these two skills, there's no right or wrong, and you could choose to use them together strategically, such as using burst of speed when running around, then in areas that would have high monster density, switch to fade for the boost to resistances and the physical damage reduction, which also works with the additional physical damage reduction gear, up to 50%. Each point into fade is another percent into physical damage reduction, such as it being right now at level 6, so there's 6% physical damage reduction. Now for where it's most important to understand which charges to use and why, the martial arts skill tree. Before I go into the skills I'm using, I want to briefly explain what all the skills do to better understand how they will be used together, and you can then experiment with the playstyle that you enjoy most. To skip this part and simply just to go to where I'm going to be talking about the actual skills I'll use on this build, make sure you go check out the timestamp down in the video description, as well as I will have on screen the time that you can go to be able to continue the video. But for those that are wanting to learn about the skills, hopefully this section will help you to understand them better. First, Tiger Strike adds off-weapon enhanced damage to your attacks, looking at both the claw-based damage for using claw attacks, and the quality of your boots for the kick damage. Cobra Strike is similar to Feral Rage for the Druid. It allows you to leech life and mana back, which is determined by the amount of damage that you do, and is often paired with Tiger Strike. However, you can only leech from enemies that are able to be leeched from, meaning that Uber Mephisto and the Undead cannot be leeched from, but having full charges of Cobra Strike usually is more than enough to be able to supplement your health as you attack. Fist of Fire is tricky, but looking at the tooltip, it does fire damage and adds a radius for the damage for charge 2, and has a burning effect on the third charge. But there's something not shown in the tooltip that, unless understood, can cripple your build without you even knowing. Fist of Fire looks at your skill level and multiplies it by 3, and converts the physical damage that you deal into fire damage. The max that Fist of Fire should be at is 33, as anything in the triple digits, meaning skill level 34, when multiplied by 3 makes 102. So being a skill level 33 multiplied by 3 gets you still in the double digits of being a 99. Skill level 34 turns all of your physical damage into fire damage, meaning that if you fight something that is physical immune, the skill first hits for the physical damage, which would be 0, then converts it to fire, which anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Additionally, if you have the skill points at 34, you won't be able to leech from this attack regardless of using Cobra Strike, Life Leech gear, or even Life Tap. So all of your physical damage is converted to fire damage, and Life Leech only works with physical damage. Saying all of this isn't to discourage you from using the skill, but rather to hopefully help you to be aware of what to expect if you add more plus to skills gear to your build in time, and why it'll be important to manage the hard points that you put into the skill. Claws of Thunder adds lightning damage to the first charge, a Nova on the second, and charge bolts on the third. However, using this with Phoenix Strike, the Nova and Charge Bolts have a next hit delay of 4 frames. The Nova procs first as it's charged to, and the Charge Bolts proc right after. But within the radius of the Nova, the Charge Bolts won't do any damage. But, as they spread farther than the radius of the Nova, they will be able to do damage, adding more AoE potential in the end. Also, because of the Nova's next hit delay, if you have your increased attack speed really high to be able to get it to 3 frames instead of 4, your Novas may proc and overlap each other, making the overall damage being done by them considerably less. So many would rather be slower to kick to ensure that each Nova proc actually does the full potential of damage rather than have them overlap and miss out on potential damage. Blades of Ice deals cold damage, adds a radius to the second charge, and freezes enemies that can be frozen with the third charge. But for monsters that can't be frozen, chills them instead. This, like Claws of Thunder, is a great AoE skill to ensure better survivability. For Phoenix Strike, it casts Meteor for the first charge, adds Chain Lightning on the second charge, and Chaos Ice Bolts on the third charge. However, the Chain Lightning has a 4-frame next hit delay, and if using all 3 charges with the Claws of Thunder, which already has 2 skills overlapping each other with their own next hit delays, the Chain Lightning will also fall into the same next hit delay for enemies immediately in front of you or around you if you're swarmed by a mob. The Chaos Ice Bolts aren't important to charge up as they also have their own next hit delay and will be overlapped by the Claws of Thunder procs, of which the damage being done by the Chaos Ice Bolts will only be hitting monsters farthest away from you, and only will be hit once each time the charge is procced. Because this is a budget build, this really isn't necessary to use as it really doesn't add much to the overall damage that would be noticeable in the long run. For the finishers, starting with Dragon Talon, it's similar to the Paladin Zeal. The amount of kicks it says it does at its current skill level is how many kicks it will non-stop do, meaning even if you miss a kick, knock enemies back, or whatever you're fighting dies, it's still going to follow through with the animation of the amount of kicks it's supposed to do. This is why many will invest very few points into the skill if they're not running Ubers to not get stuck in animation lock, as you could still be attacked and possibly killed. Your boot's quality is what determines the damage done with this attack, not your weapon, which is why many will get weaker claws with the plus to specific skills that they desire, as the claw damage doesn't matter. Dragon Talon can often be seen being used with Tiger Strike, as the enhanced damage on Tiger Strike is determined by your boots. Dragon Claw uses both claws to be able to deal damage, which is great for AoE and crowd control, and benefits from claw mastery. Dragon Tail focuses on first understanding the physical damage of your kick, then adds fire damage on top of that with a fire explosion around your kick. If this is the preferred finisher that you'd like to use, ideally it would be good to use a Reaper's Toll Act 2 Mercenary or an Act 5 Lawbringer Mercenary for the physical damage reduction. Dragonflight is a kick, but also teleports you onto an enemy, and this includes going through walls, such as going through the Worldstone Keep and seeing a monster on the other side of a wall. However, when you teleport, you do have an initial kick once you get to the enemy, so be advised that the animation of the kick has to first play out before you can use other attacks. Now, with the understanding of the skills out of the way, we can move on to the skills I'm using and the charges I'll be proccing. This build is focusing around using Phoenix Strike, so I have maxed out Fist of Fire, max Claws of Thunder, max Blades of Ice, 1 point into Tiger Strike, 1 point into Cobra Strike, and max out Phoenix Strike. Then you need at least 1 point into the skills on the right to unlock Dragonflight, as this is our means of teleporting without Enigma. But do keep in mind that you need an enemy to click on to be able to use it, meaning that you can't teleport without telestomping an enemy. The ideal charge build-up that I'm going to be using will be all 3 charges from Fist of Fire, the first charge of Claws of Thunder for the enemy that will be right in front of me, as well as I want my Chain Lightning from Phoenix Strike, which does considerably more damage than either the Nova or the Charge Bolt proc of Claws of Thunder, to be effective in dealing damage, as the Chain Lightning will circle back around and deal additional damage, aside from the initial pass of fanning out from the kick. All 3 charges of Blades of Ice as enemies that are not super uniques or act bosses will be put into hit recovery and frozen when pairing using Claws of Thunder and Blades of Ice, helping with crowd control and survivability. Lastly, for the charge ups, only going to charge 2 for Phoenix Strike to get the Chain Lightning. Then the primary finisher I'm going to be using is Dragon Claw for a large group of enemies to be able to have good AoE, and if I'm fighting any act bosses, switch over to Dragon Talon. Using Tiger Strike and Cobra Strike are great additions, but on lower player settings, they aren't necessary. But do add them into your rotation if you want more damage and need to leech life and mana. My remaining points go into weapon block, as when I think of a budget build, I think of gear that could still work as decent to good damage is still done, but survivability needs to be a top priority as you're using non-ideal gear. So weapon block will help us to block, as our resistances aren't great by any means. But if you decide to more focus on using Dragon Claw and get better gear, shifting points into Claw Mastery will be the more ideal way to go. However, if you want to eventually do Ubers, it's best advised to keep your points in weapon block. For the gear, starting from the top, I'm using Bulwark for the helm, Hustle for the body armor, and Dual Mosaic for the claws. The amulet is Saracen's Chance, as it helps with both attributes to allocate points into vitality for increased survivability, but also 25 to all res is great for this build. The boots are upped core riders. As mentioned earlier, your kick damage comes from the boot quality, so upping them adds more damage, and you still get all of the great stats such as Open Wounds, Deadly Strike, and Crushing Blow to proc. The first ring is a rare quad resistance ring, the belt is String of Beers, as the physical damage reduction is great for survivability, and the life leech helps to not have to use potions often or even at all, depending on where you're farming and on what player settings. The second ring is a Ravenfrost for Cannot Be Frozen. The gloves are crafted blood gloves for Crushing Blow, Dual Leech, and 20 increased attack speed. Ideally, you'd want to use 220 martial arts gloves, either crafted, rare, or 320 magic gloves. But again, I'm going with budget, so they are good but not perfect. On Switch, I'm using the Old Faithful CT8 and Spirit combo to be able to boost our health up. In the inventory is my cube, both tomes, my torch, Annie. However, you can 86 them, but you will need to redistribute your attribute points and focus on your resistances greatly. Using Fade at this point would be mandatory for better survivability. And because I want this to be able to be used when farming, all the small charms are 7% Magic Find small charms with the Geats to boost Magic Find. For the additional stats, 27% physical damage reduction, which can be increased if using Fade, 26% life stolen per hit, not including the increase that Cobra Strike would give if you choose to use it, 221% Magic Find, 80 increased attack speed, 95% faster run walk, 40% faster hit recovery, plus 19% to fire skill damage, plus 25% to lightning skill damage, and plus 24% to cold skill damage. I'm not going to be using a Mercenary with this build, as the ideal one for this build would be an Infinity Mercenary. But Rob in my testing Mosaic video mentioned how Infinity wasn't an accurate representation of this build, as many wouldn't be able to make the Runeword on ladder early on, or even at all. So in fairness, instead of just not using Infinity, I'm going to get rid of the Mercenary completely. Now that we've discussed the attributes, the skill trees, the gear for my character and my Mercenary, let's go ahead and check out this build in action to see how well it actually plays out. Okay, this is too easy. Let's go ahead and bump up the players count. Huh. Really?
death can save you from me.
I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how well this build works. Hopefully you can get the chance to check it out before the devs nerf it and make it unplayable again, because we were enjoying a build seldom played prior as one of the new S tier builds. If you want to check out the endgame version of this build using Mosaic, check out my build guide where I'll show both a lightning and fire focused build. And that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to see if this build would be something that you would be interested in going into the future. And if anything, at least just enjoyed the video. If you like this kind of content, want to see more, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever a new video comes out.
Come on. Come on. Come on then. There you are. There you are.
And if you like this video, please let me know by leaving a like. It really is appreciated to be able to help my channel to grow. And if you want to see more of my Diablo 2 Resurrected content, make sure to click the card in the corner up above to check out my Diablo 2 Resurrected playlist with a lot of videos already in it, with a lot more coming in the very near future. Other than that, I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.